It starts with what looks like a pirate attack in the Gulf of Aden in 2011. But was it really piracy or something far more calculated?
What starts off as some sort of a plundering is actually a premeditated murder.
The book raised questions about accountability. Shipping is a massive sector that basically transports like 80 to 90% of all this world's cargo. And yet it's so convoluted and opaque.
Whether it was shipping or marine insurance, I couldn't help but notice a little bit of the male-dominated world context.
It's not a little bit of male domination. It is the boys' club. There's no two ways about it.
It was super exciting, total Bollywood masala, but the clincher was that it was all real, right?
Hi and welcome to the Changemakers Book Club. This is Gunjali. Have you ever read a non-fiction book that makes you stop and think, wait, this actually happened? That's exactly how I felt reading Dead in the Water, a gripping true crime story that's part murder mystery, part high-seas financial thriller. It starts with what looks like a pirate attack in the Gulf of Aden in 2011. An oil tanker called the Brilliant Virtuoso is set ablaze, and then, just days later, the marine surveyor sent to investigate, David Mockett, is killed. But was it really piracy or something far more calculated? Through sharp investigative storytelling, Matthew Campbell and Kit Shellel uncover a shocking web of greed, fraud, and cover-ups at the heart of the global shipping industry. It's a story about power, money, and terrifying consequences of asking the wrong questions. Also at its heart are the people, David Mockett and his wife Cynthia, who were looking forward to his retirement, cut short by his murder and then her fight for answers. Alan Marquez, a Filipino seafarer who spent a decade working on ships to support his family, caught on the watch the night of the attack and terrified by the risks of speaking out. And of course, Marios Iliopoulos, Super Mario, an alleged poster child for the men who profit from the chaos at sea. This book was such a powerful reminder of the complexity of financial instruments and just how tangled and opaque the world of shipping really is, with honest jurisdictional loopholes, shadowy owners, and the high-stakes cargo it moves across the globe. Some of the most fascinating things I learned in the book, that it can actually be profitable to sink your own ship to collect the insurance payout, with not a lot to worry about in terms of the consequences. That vessels can be registered in countries that are landlocked purely for tax reasons. I have this and so many interesting themes to unpack with my guests today. My first guest today is Lakshmi Iyer, Group President Investments and CEO Bajaj Alternates. A trailblazer in India's financial sector, Lakshmi has been featured on Forbes' W Power and Self-Made Women lists and named one of Asia's top 25 most influential women in asset management. She's a changemaker who brings sharp financial acumen and a love for films, travel, and food to everything she does. Also joining us is Malavika Bambawale, a seasoned changemaker in the clean energy space with over 20 years of global experience across APAC, the EU, and the US. She's currently the CEO of SAS Energy based in the UK, which is helping accelerate the adoption of renewable technologies for the commercial and industrial sector. So welcome to both of you. I'm so excited to have the conversation with you about Dead in the Water. Lakshmi, let me start with you first. Tell us how you would describe the experience of reading the book and what you found most interesting.
Hi, Gunjali. So firstly, I must say thank you for getting us to do this because this is something I'm doing for the first time. I've done a lot of book clubs, of course, a lot of them with you. But this is the first time we get to do a podcast around it. Coming straight up to the book, I'd say that I'm not a big fan of nonfiction. And I think you know that. But I'll tell you what really kind of stood out in this book is that the narrative, the way the authors of the book were also the journalists who've been trying to write this entire book in the form of a mystery. I think that's what clearly stood out for me. And more importantly, I'm this big masala Bollywood sort of a buff. So, the small kind of twists and turns that they try to reveal in the book, what starts off as some sort of a plundering is actually a premeditated murder. I think all of that was pretty exciting for me. And it didn't really feel like it was a nonfiction.
And yeah, I think the book has this thriller kind of quality. I couldn't put it down. It was quite a quick read for me as well. It didn't read like a nonfiction, and you're absolutely right about that. And Malavika, coming to you, you're a champion of sustainability. I think first I want to get your thoughts on the shipping industry in general and like how that played out while you were reading this book. Did some of your feelings change? Some of the things that you feel very strongly about come out? Let's get into that with you.
Yeah, thanks, Gunjali. Again, echoing Lakshmi's words. I mean, thank you for getting me to read this book. It was super exciting. Total Bollywood masala, but the clincher was that it was all real, right? So that was the fantastic part of it, that none of this is actually fiction. So for me, I mean, I have actually worked with the shipping sector a couple of times in my career. Look, the book raised questions about accountability, right? So shipping is a massive sector that basically transports like 80 to 90% of all this world's cargo. And yet it's so convoluted and opaque. So that makes it very difficult to hold the sector accountable for any of its actions, let alone sustainability. So, ownership structures are deliberately complicated. Registration of companies is going in countries with lax regulations. And with this lack of corporate governance, it's almost impossible to hold any player accountable for any of their actions. That makes it very scary. But having said that, that's the dark side. And I don't know if it's the complete picture, because I want to share that I've also worked with some very well-governed listed maritime players. And either they're pure players or they're part of a large mining company or a commodity or logistics group who are not like this, right? And they probably form a smaller proportion of the entire sector, right? So I'm working with probably some of the blue chips, but they are professionally run companies who are looking for ways to improve everything, right? In their corporate governance, improve efficiency of their operations, sustainability in the sector by exploring new types of technologies, new types of fuel like hydrogen, ammonia, etc. So, I wanted to point that exists as well.
Hard to imagine given what we just read, and it seems like it's a world full of people who are just out there to make money any which way. I think, Lakshmi, talking about money, one of the things that really stood out to me in Dead in the Water is just how complicated the world of finance can be, especially when it comes to things like marine insurance. For some of us, it's hard to even wrap our heads around how these instruments work, let alone how they shape real world events, like what happened with the brilliant Virtuoso. How do you think we can make these complex systems a little bit more understandable for the average person? And how do you think global financial events like the ones we've read about in the book actually end up affecting all of us in our day-to-day lives, even if we don't actually realize it?
Sure, Gunjali. So the thing is, marine insurance is a very, very niche sort of a topic. Of course, it's part of the broader financial services ambit. And for lay people like probably you and me, the relevance of this might not be very significant. But if you extrapolate something like this to, say, a life insurance or a general insurance, which really impact all of us, the crux and the key is twofold. Whether it's, when I start from a top down, I think try to use a lot of analogies. I'll give you a classic case in point. When I do roadshows or I do events, meeting, whether I meet, the offshore investors or the domestic investors, I try to build in a lot of film and food examples, not just because it's my love, but I've realized that the audience relate to it. And when you are able to join the dots or probably, link the two together, it kind of de-jargonizes it. I think that's point number one. And point number two is how this book, starts off with talking about all of the insurance sector and all the associated jargons and the surveyors and all of that. Instead, if you introduce characters first, which again I do when I talk about the markets that I am part of. So, analogies and characters is something which stays with people in their mind. It's so, so very important. And lastly, when you're an end consumer of a product, it has to be completely decluttered. As I said, an insurance as an industry, whether it's globally or in India, impacts all of us because it is a push product. It's not a pull product. Okay. And therefore, to be able to understand the intricacies, I don't want to use the word fraud very mindfully, but there are so many bells and whistles which are surrounding these products. Therefore, it's very, very important for you to understand what you are getting into because it could have a lot of economic repercussions and implications on how your investment life is going to change. So I think these are some of the things that we need to keep in mind when we associate ourselves with some of these products available in the industry.
And I totally agree with that point on centering our knowledge around characters, right? I was at a walk around London, which was around the empire and the economy. And the guide who was taking us around actually created a fictitious character. And the story helped me actually retain a lot of what he was saying and actually understand what he was saying. But on the same walk, actually, I saw the Lloyd's building in London, which is quite a striking structure. It's all steel and exposed and pipes on the outside. It's nicked in the inside-out building. Apparently, the architectural style is called Baolism, which feels oddly appropriate for an institution that's so tied to the inner workings of global finance. But another thing that struck me was its location. It's right where the East India Company once operated. It feels like this powerful visual metaphor of the long arc of economic dominance from the empire to now capitalism with the insurance. Malvika, I wanted to ask you, given your work at the intersection of energy and finance, what role do you think economic power plays in shaping sustainability outcomes today? And I know you talked about few of the players that you work with and how they are trying to do better. What do you think starts to shift when large corporations and financial players begin to take ownership of the solutions we need?
Yeah, thanks, Gunjali. I think economic power plays the most key role, right? In my opinion, when it comes to being a responsible citizen, the corporations that I've worked with that are exploring these cleaner solutions that I talked about are obviously very powerful players who have the ability and the headroom to think and plan ahead. They also have the influence in shaping the future regulations and setting the standards for the industry to follow and all of that. But often what happens is that it ends up creating a two-tier market. So I work, for example, in food commodities, so palm oil, right? What happened was there were certain companies that wanted to embrace the responsible palm oil and others who couldn't afford it. So then it created a two-tier market. So, you have the responsible companies serving the responsible citizens at higher prices. And then you have the customers who can't or don't want to afford paying for accountability, and companies who don't want to be bothered by accountability, and if they get left behind and create a second-tier market. So same thing, the question is, who wins and who loses? So in the shipping sector as well, there may be some who are responsible, there's some who couldn't be bothered. And who wins and who loses is honestly an age-old question of like economic cycles as well. Like when times are good, then everything is moving in a positive direction and the tier 2 market is approaching tier 1. But in economic downturns, honestly, sometimes even the most responsible may hold back and prioritize monetary outcomes over others. But what I suspect is that a lot of industries go through this phase of maybe starting out as a chaotic Wild West. And then our job is to sort of raise the bar, right? So make it unacceptable and keep raising the bar at every economic cycle. So hopefully I'd like to be the optimist and think that this phase is coming in the future for the shipping sector as well.
And Lakshmi, pivoting a little bit to raising the bar, I know you're a big champion for women in finance, and it's something I really appreciate about your work. While reading Dead in the Water, I couldn't help but notice a little bit of the male-dominated world context, whether it was shipping or marine insurance. They talked about Lloyd's and how there were all these men in suits going in and out of the building. It made me think about how much that lack of diversity shapes the way decisions get made. And I just want to have your thoughts on what needs to change to get more women in these spaces. When we do have more women on the table, what shifts?
Saw a little bit of male domination that you alluded to in the book. I would say, barring the guy who got murdered, his wife, I think it is the boys' club. There's no two ways about it. Whether it is the global financial landscape, whether it's marine insurance or in the industry that I'm operating in, which is the investment world, the most important thing I'd say that's required is education. See, when women's participation in the financial services is actually like an inverted funnel, if you can visualize, it is very, very broad at the bottom, and then when it starts coming, it's like a marathon race. When you start running, all of them come together, and then the funnel becomes inverted right there at the top. So I think education is the most important thing, where you are trying to spread your wings and try to invest time in women who really want to make it to the top. That's point number one. And second, most important thing is walk the talk. Only talking about this in boardrooms and in webinars and on Women's Day, most specifically the most overrated day as I call it, it's not going to suffice.
Yeah, powerful words there, and so much more that we need to do in that space. I think I want to pivot a little bit to the personal side. The part that really stayed with me was David Mockett's story, not just the mystery of his death, but his life. He was an expat working in Yemen, far from home, doing his difficult and dangerous job. And he was just about to retire and return to the UK when everything changed. It really made me think about the lives of so many people who live and work in different countries, move around the world. Malvika, you yourself have done that, often in tough environments, but putting off like rest or joy for later. I want to hear your personal thoughts on that.
Yeah, Gunjan, his story definitely struck a chord with me. He was a whistleblower or about to become one when he was murdered. I mean, this is quite a tragic story of a professional who was one of the best in his job and a true expert, and whose attempts to expose the insurance fraud were basically sabotaged in a most brutal way. But what I liked about his story was he was someone who loved his work and he was dedicated to it. So I think that part of the fact that he was driven by love for his job and passion and honesty and attention to detail. I'm one of those people who gets lost in my job as well. I get lost in my job and in the purpose of my job, and I'm driven by it now and in the future. And I think that if somebody took that away from me, I would be quite lost. And I have lived in my career as well, away from family, separated from my spouse, because both of us sort of pursued our job. So I do get that. But in David's case, he finally decided to retire and go back to his family. And that's the tragedy, right? And just on the cusp of that decision is when he lost it all. So definitely, I think there is something to be said about not postponing life for the future, but living it now. But at the same time, the job is also something that gives me a lot of joy. So I guess the answer is that it's unresolved. I don't know what the answer is, but yeah, that's the dilemma
always the
there.
balance. But I love the fact that Matthew and Kit spent so much time humanizing David for us. Even some of the pictures in the book from his wedding, and it ended with his grave. Not a great story there. Lakshmi, I think I'll be doing everybody a disservice if I don't ask you to describe Super Mario to me. If he was a Bollywood character, who would he be? Did you like him? Was he your favorite character? Tell me more.
I would say Ranbir for me. If I have to. Because extremely versatile, and I think the relatability quotient was significantly higher. So that would be the character for me.
Malvika, who's your favorite character?
So I think it's probably David Mockett.
I liked the sailor, Marquez, as well. Alan, who was the sailor on watch on that day, and just hearing the story about where he came from was great for me as well. And I like that about the book. I think it brings a lot of the people element into the what could have been like a documentary of like, this happened, this was an incident, these were the lawsuits. But it is a book club podcast. And so if I can go to both of you, and maybe Lakshmi to you first, to tell us if you recommend the book and who should read it and why.
Oh, the book is definitely a must read, as I said, for a person like me who's so much into fiction. So, by the way, let me clarify. I do read non-fiction books, but they're all related to finance. And they're typically required to kind of ensure that my brain doesn't go rusty. I think this book is recommended for anyone and everyone. Definitely for book lovers, because it's a very different genre. It's a fast and racy read. So I'd say anyone who's interested in experimenting with different genre of book, even if you just read pure fiction, if you just read literature or philosophy or history, I think this book is definitely cut out for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is a book that cuts across genres. But for me, I think the folks who should also read the book are those who work in business like us, right? I think we need to all read the book, because this is a dose of reality that really opens your eyes to the fact that there is a world out there that we don't understand, and that we have to be aware that it exists.
And yeah, coming to the reality aspect of it, I wish there was a different ending, but we all know that the ending was what it was. But thank you for all your thoughts. I loved having this conversation with you.
Awesome.
Thank you, Gunjali.
Thank you so much for listening in. One of the things I find really compelling about Dead in the Water and books like it is the way journalists bring a unique lens to storytelling. There's a rigor and relentlessness to the way they dig into systems, follow the money, and surface hidden truths. It's part investigative reporting, part narrative drama, and it makes for incredibly powerful reading. If that's your thing, you'll enjoy Bad Blood by Joy and Carey Rue. It's a jaw-dropping story of Theranos and Elizabeth Holmes, a masterclass in how journalism can unravel a billion-dollar lie piece by piece. You may recall that she is currently serving an 11-year prison sentence for defrauding investors. Carey Rue himself spoke about being threatened and intimidated just like Matthew and Kit were, as he worked to bring the truth to light. And if you're up for something more swashbuckling, Red of the Sky, Blue of the Sea by Maggie Tokuda Hall reimagines the life of Ching Si, the world's first female pirate leader. It's a brilliant blend of history and storytelling that challenges everything you think you know about piracy, power, and resistance. This is Gunjali, and thanks for joining us on the Changemakers Book Club. Until next time.